fire ant hill.
Pretty sure that the
So
two
everybody
splits are weaker.
That's got a smoker, just squeeze it 3 times.
Yeah, we can go ahead.
You got one with there? Another one with. We shouldn't need them all, but again, before we start with the hive, we want to make sure that it is doing what we brought it to do.
Inside my family.
So we pack up. This is a split that.
Yeah, both
Yeah.
of these nukes are requeened recently.
Requeened,
Don.
eminent
Okay, so
And the
apiaries.
original hive that was here was moved down at the end with the original queen.
Now the one thing that I didn't do yet was I didn't before taking the lid off the hive. You want to give them a little bit of smoke at the entrance, just so that it's kind of like ringing the doorbell. You know, bees communicate a little differently than we do. We're using our voice. The bees actually use chemical signals, and this kind of is a manipulation of those signals to some degree.
Is that a preferred feeder?
It's my preferred feeder, and we use them
well.
here because people can come in, feed, and not get stung because there's wire mesh here. And you just, you know, you don't have any bees come out at you when you lift the lid off. This is my preferred feeder. I don't know about anybody else, but this is the only kind we use here.
How does that affect like ventilation and anything like that? Because I know you're not using the vent board on that also.
Yeah, there isn't any real ventilation out of that one, but you could put a stick here and that would work. You
But
wouldn't
you-
want to do that at certain times of year because other bees might want to get in the same way.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of surprised there's not. I was kind of asking like why wouldn't you versus why would you use ventilation?
Yeah, you could put an inner cover over top of the feeder and
That'd be preferred, you think, Don?
He always
yeah,
starts
you
at
could
the
do
bottom.
that.
Don always starts at the bottom.
Especially in the
I
winter.
start at the top. You do what you like to do. We
Well,
like
summertime.
using.
let me explain why I do that.
Even more important than
Generally speaking, the brood's going to be down below the food. And a lot of people do like to see what the food looks like and everything, but if you start manipulating those frames quite a bit, and there's honey leaking down, these bees are going to, what's going on up there? You know, and so I like to go to the bottom and work my way back out. If I run into a problem, I can stack it back and go. If I'm now, I can look at this one before we start looking at this one if I think the brood is here. The reason I separated is just to sort of see where the main cluster was also. So that's again why I like to get to where the main body is. Now the one thing that I didn't do, and I don't think we'd need to, is since it was just requeened, I didn't look at the bottom here to see if there was any cells. And at this time of year, that'd be sort of a, you know, just a quick and simple, do I see any cells there? That doesn't show you all of the queen cells that might be there, but it does give you an indication as to whether or not, oh, I see cells there. Now I got to look and see where else there are cells and whether or not I still got a queen in here.
So they'd normally be at the bottom of the.
They'd normally be between the two, between the upper and the lower, yeah. That's not exclusive though. That's just where, if you see them there, you got to look everywhere. If you don't see them there, you pretty much can make a very presumptuous assumption that they're probably not really geared up to go.
Is that because there's more room there?
Yeah, bees, you've probably all heard about the bee space. That's what Reverend Langstroth was, what he's known for discovering is the distance between the comb here and the comb here. And the comb plus the bee is this gap. So the only place where that really is not respected by the bees is when they're building queen cells. They'll actually make more cells, more space to build a cell if it is between the combs. So this is already a gap where they'll do that anyhow.
So you guys set up this nuke hive like this because you're going to take all 10 frames and put it into a 10-frame hive?
Well, we
Say that again.
started at first just because the limited amount of bees, you didn't want to give them too much space too soon.
Yeah, we started with 5 frames. It started like that.
With a one box.
But you double stacked it instead of putting it into a normal 10-frame.
Right.
How come?
Yeah.
Keep the
I mean,
food
this
up
is a
above.
10-frame hive. It's just vertical instead of horizontal.
We left food above them, maybe.
This
You
is
guys put food in there for them?
Well, they
that
already
feeder.
had frames with them.
Yeah, this,
Or just a
And the
feeder?
feeder.
this frame
There were
is
honey frames,
food.
too.
There are quite a number of eggs on here too, though, so she could be on here. And I pulled this one out because it looked like the easiest one to pull up. Yeah, there are quite a number of eggs on here. I don't see her, but we can pass her around. But keep your eye out for her. She could be here.
People never seen eggs. They ought to.
A lot of drones.
That's pretty important.
Okay,
Yeah.
Jim, come
Besides
over
having a
here
wood smoker
and you
and
can
a
point to the
hive
different
tool.
kinds of bees.
You do
Who
want a
needs to
good
see
pair
the
of
bees?
eyes or a good pair of glasses.
Oh, I
I mean, are these marked?
see the chunky looking guys with the flat bottom.
Don, don't you like doing
Watch
it
out for
this
that.
way too? Because if you do find her, you'll know she can't go back up or down, right? Isn't that a
Yeah, separating the two units, you know, I can do whatever I want. If I see that she's here and I want to walk away with that, I can, or vice versa.
Yeah, drone doesn't
Yep.
want to see
Yeah, I like to.
big chunky guys.
Because if she's found in here, you can manipulate the
Up
other
here in the
species.
corners is calf honey.
Now, what we were saying about queen cells being generally on the bottom, a couple of cups.
When do you start worrying about the cup, the quantity of cups? Or do you
well,
actually tear them off every time?
these are just little starter buttons.
Right.
They're just to worry us a little bit. But if you see eggs or something in them, then you know you've got a time frame within which to do something about it. If they're really filled up with jelly, then you got less time. If they're
Right.
capped,
Then you have less time.
well, if they're capped, don't knock them down until you find mom.
Right.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
it might be too late.
Yeah.
Then you're
Yeah.
dooming that hive. Because
Right.
then you're gonna have
I was in a couple of hives a couple of weeks ago. A fellow wanted me to help him make up some splits.
Yeah, but when he said a
And
cup,
first time we went into it, we were looking for caps and stuff. We found some caps. Said, okay, yeah, this one's ready to split. And then we started hearing piping.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it was too late. It was too late. We didn't find any eggs. She had already left, and her daughters were already,
Get ready to battle.
yeah.
What point is
So,
the existing
you know,
queen leave?
And it was during that cold and, you know, it was about, like I said, 2 weeks ago when it was so miserable. You wouldn't have thought that they would have left then, but they did.
And they actually push her out.
Do they keep a steady? Hey Don, I got a question about your smoker.
Yeah.
So once
Where'd you get a
that's
clip for your bellows?
I just took a piece of metal and bent
Are
it.
you okay?
Drilled a hook up, and that has become my third hand.
Yeah.
You know, I got 2 hands full.
I
but I got this
like that.
right nearby. I don't know why.
Most of them now.
Why
Guys,
the
y'all
producers
want to
don't
probably take a look at this frame. This is
do that.
a great frame with
solid.
There's another. You got another queen cup. You haven't seen one?
Yeah.
Yeah, another cup, which is also dry. Yeah, we can pass this around.
I'm really not good at this.
Did you see larvae on the same frame as the egg?
That first frame that Pat has has so far been the one most likely to have mom on her.
Eat resources. Take the boys.
Wow, there's so much brood here.
That's good.
I know. So many frames of it. It's awesome. Yeah. These bees are going to need space before long.
Well, they've got some up above, yeah.
Hey,
So,
Pat. You want to get the brood?
That's a good
Show this
photo
to-
for your.
Here, let me put this one.
Oh, I haven't. That's pretty cool.
Hey, hanging up on
Be a good photo for
Kind of forgot to put my
your.
veil on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of drones in this.
Jim, you can
Yeah.
take it and show it.
And if you think about it, this was a made-up split, right?
Okay.
So they will have been the last ones to have emerged from prior to the
one time,
split.
to speak. And when she gets her hives,
I'm not saying that very right. They, you know, they're in there a little bit longer than the worker brood.
That was our very first one that you pulled out.
Bunch of eggs in there.
3 to 5 years. Really?
I need to look for her a little more carefully.
You're probably going to lose them before
Could be along the wall there.
Well, she could be.
might have gone.
This is the type of frame I like to look
Yeah, 'cause
for
we
her
got
on.
at least 2 queens.
There's nothing in these cells.
We have 2
There is. So I want to pull an egg out just to show people what we need good glasses for.
Oh, is this her?
No.
Oh, sorry.
I see a drone.
Big drones?
A big.
Go now.
Yeah, that's
I know it
impressive.
didn't have a pointy bottom either.
So she's marked? Oh no. Probably not.
She's probably 1 or 2.
That's what's at the base of each of these cells.
Wow.
That's why you need glasses.
Oh man, I can never.
Can you see that?
There's one of them in each of these cells.
Occasionally. Depends on how.
Or a larvae that's about a day old.
A lot of eggs.
So that's why I'm spending a little more time looking at this particular frame.
Good. How you doing, Mike?
What did you just say, Don? You're spending more time on this one because why?
It's full of eggs.
And you think you'll find her?
Well, she's usually where
The smallest eggs are.
yeah. So
I'd rather have a fleet in the hand than
moved up to the upper box. This one back where it was. And let's take a look here.
Yeah, I think that's
Find your queen.
If she's already gone,
You're screwed.
That's the egg brought out.
Oh wow. I've seen them inside, but I've never seen them outside. This one's not
Eggs are good for you, right?
They're working on this one, so that's good.
yeah, we moved them to the center the other day, Dawn, on the one.
Did you find her yet?
No, that one friend that I just put back in, there's plenty of evidence that she's here.
These, we just requeened about
This is
a month
mostly
ago
food,
with
so
VSH,
Moving north.
sensitive margin. M&N, Apiary's down in Georgia.
Pat, these queens weren't marked, right?
yeah, there's plenty of eggs on here, so this is a good one to look for.
And
Right here, right here, right here.
To me, they're a little on the smaller
a month
side.
ago, I got them a month ago,
Ours are.
and we've got, I've already got.
Plenty of evidence
But I've been getting
that she's doing her good job. She's filled up
and they have been.
eggs almost up to where she is. I don't know why she's on the nectar right now. Probably because we've upset it.
No,
I don't know if you want to pass her around or not.
Anybody want to see the queen?
He's up by her left thumb.
His queens are not cheap by any stretch, but he does.
Here she is,
Guys, we
right
got the
there.
queen.
Yeah, I
So
see.
tier 1. That's an established. So he has tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 is.
Isn't she a pretty golden shower?
You must have a good feral
Regular or not.
the copper color. Verify the brood pattern, and they've already planted.
That would be hard to spot for sure. Thumb,
And so I think it's
see her hiding right there?
7 with tier 2.
She's coming around the other way.
Which box did this frame come out of?
Get a picture of her. I have a granddaughter
Right
doing
there.
bees in school.
Wow, that is.
Am I crowding anybody?
That one has a few.
Okay, everybody, he's going to do a sugar shake, and I'd like you to pay attention.
So, and then you hang a left on Kobe Goodwin.
Oh no.
Come up to where the lake is.
Now, there are different ways of doing this. I think I saw a little cattle space, didn't I?
Cattle farm on the right side, and there's a grass field on the left. There's two houses right there. Right, there's a small pond.
So there's sugar inside the container?
Not
Well,
yet.
I'll put the sugar
I
in
mean,
there.
is there like debris inside there?
It's just old sugar.
Yeah, it's old sugar.
Stuck to the sides.
The bees over there.
So what he does is he just gently gets them to fall into the jar.
And I've got more than enough in here. Well, what I do, what I did, which I didn't do, if you take about 100 milliliters is about a half a cup. Right? Just take your jar, your container, pour half a cup of water in, and then put a pen mark. That'll be a little over 300 bees, equivalent of over 300 bees.
How much? What was the volume again?
100 milliliters.
100 milliliters. Okay.
100 milliliters equals 300 bees, approximately. And, you know, so put your mark on your jar. This is better than 300.
That's just sugar?
It's 10x confectioner's sugar.
Baker's sugar, yep.
10x.
And the reason I like to sift it in through this screen, as you can see, just being in the vehicle all the time, it does get a little bit clumpy. And that, it's a nice dry day today. If it's a real sticky, wet day, it won't be quite as effective. The physical activity of the sugar is what dislodges the mites from the.
How often should we check that in that way?
It's a good idea to do a spring check like now.
Well,
when the mite population is going to be most abundant, is going to be in this part of the state. It'll be just after the honey flow, probably late June, July. And that's when it becomes more critical to check.
Okay. What about with a new package?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's a good idea to get a baseline in the early part of the year.
Right.
And then you never really want to exceed, if we find more than 3 mites in this jar, it's too many. And the earlier in the season when you reach that threshold, the more critical it is. Now this colony has just been split recently. There's been a pause in the brood cycle as a result. So we shouldn't approach that many. When I say 3 mites per 100. So if we found, 6 or 7 mites, that still would be below that per 100
You got him in there.
level.
So Don, this hive did have mites last year though, and now with the new queen, she hasn't been in there long enough to have too many brood cycles in there yet to make the numbers go down yet. So that's why we're glad to find out what we've got going.
If we don't find that many mites, it will have been as a result of interrupting that brood cycle more than anything else. Yeah. The reason I took the frame that we did was saw a fair number of drones on that. What I didn't do was, and again as a result of this having been requeened, selecting your frame for sampling, I like to select a frame that has young fuzzy bees that have just recently emerged within the last day or so, and particularly drones of that same type. I did this one a little bit more randomly just because there weren't any emerging right yet.
Stay in the cell longer.
Because when was this reintroduced now? The queen?
3 weeks ago?
Yeah, so she don't, all of these are from the previous queen. All of these bees that are emerging now are still from the older queen.
Oh, that.
Until next week.
So you're saying do it when they're first come, do it in June.
When we go into the next, as far as when to do the sample. Yeah, as far as what bees to check, the next colony we go into, we'll look for younger bees to point out.
Okay, wait a minute.
March 19th.
Was March 19th?
That was the day we split them.
Split them. Okay, was there enough food in this hive? I've been doing other things. I don't know if there's enough food that we can leave the feeder off.
It looked. Have you been feeding it frequently up till now?
About every 4 days.
Because there was some stored nectar, or some liquid in the combs that they were building. You've still got a few frames that are not drawn out yet. I'd probably feed it some weak solution just to stimulate them to draw out that cells. You know, simulate more nectar.
So if those frames were all drawn out and there were more bees in here, we would convert it to a 10 frame, put another super on top maybe, and the nectar flow should be starting.
Yeah. So
once the nectar flow starts.
He's got to put those bees back in there, right?
Oh, yeah.
From the sugar shake?
Yeah.
He can knock them off.
We can put it at the entrance.
He mentioned the nurse bees, guys.
It is kind of handy to dump
those
them in
nurse
something.
bees won't tend to fly when you put them in the cup either, because they probably haven't flown at all yet. So you're getting the right bees that stay in your cups. So that's important too.
Yeah, when we go to the next hive, I'll point out some of the younger ones.
Yeah, you need to get good at mite shakes. You really do.
There are a few nuances to a sugar shake. We're going through the steps, but we're not really demonstrating all of the nuances. You want the younger, most recently emerged.
We are treating it.
You want.
Yeah.
I like to do it earlier on. The other thing that I'm going to rush this a little bit. We haven't left them in here long enough to really legitimize the shake.
How long do you
5 to 10
usually
minutes would be a
put them in the shade for about 10
Now,
minutes?
some fellas like to really shake them up. I don't see that as being critical if I've left enough time for those mites to come dislodged from the bees.
Dislodged because the bees were cleaning them off.
Well, the bees don't really like being all dusted, and neither do the mites. There's some grooming that's going on here, but really it's the physical action of the powder that kind of causes all of that to disassemble the mite from the bee. The mites are difficult for the bee to dislodge. The bee's body parts are all these segments. This one might have a mite on it.
Well, I guess we didn't catch it. We saved the original.
But you know, there's all these sternites that the mites will actually get up underneath and just be barely visible, let alone removable. You know. So I'm going to go ahead and shake this. I probably would have done a little longer interim between collecting and shaking, but we'll see what we've got here. There's one. At least we can determine what they look like. But again, I'm doing a very...
Yeah, I should have worn my glasses today.
How do you know it's a varroa?
Yeah, make sure you bring your glasses to the apiary. I got 2 pair.
Yeah.
But again, I'm doing this kind of quick and dirty, but at least you see what the steps are here.
So that one little black spot is a mite?
Yeah, let me see if I can clean her off a little bit. And you can see how I like to use this water. I could do it on any clean surface, but it's a little harder, particularly with clumpy sugar, to see them that way. Whereas if you do this over a little bit of water, the water dissolves the sugar and makes it so much easier to differentiate the mite from anything else.
You got a preference in the colors?
White's better.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, a bucket lid is great.
White paper plates.
Yeah.
And I am claiming the discovery of this. I was doing a sugar shake, and we used to use just a white sheet of paper, and it was kind of a dank day one day a few years ago, and the guy had a few honey buckets out in his yard. And his lids were all rusty. So let's just do it here, and the sugar dissolved, and wow, that made it so easy. You know?
I see. Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And the bees are okay with being shook around in there.
They don't like it. They don't like it.
Surprise.
Their sisters like it when they come back to the hive. This same collection technique, perhaps a slightly more accurate but a little bit more brutal method would be to do an alcohol wash, where you've got the same collection, pour alcohol in there, swirl it around, and then you can pour it through a screen like this and a collection sieve. I've got one in the truck, I'll show you. The mites land on the fabric where the bees remain in the upper portion of the sieve.
But you killed 300 bees.
Yeah.
Yeah, they died now.
Yeah.
So it's the best way to do it, but it's
Yeah.
It's more humane.
As far as a peanut butter jar, you have a preference?
Peter Pan. Yeah, in fact, that's for real. Their jars are straighter than some of them have more convolutions and stuff. And the wider the mouth is, the better. You can do it with a mason jar, but if you drop it, you know, particularly on a concrete pad.
What mesh screen?
No, this is just, the wire is just kind of clings in there by friction. Yeah,
What mesh wire is that?
8 mesh, yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna,
So they apparently don't sell them that way.
These here, you can buy them.
You can buy them? Okay.
yeah, you can spend a lot of money buying a fancy shaker cage, but my wife, Susan, has a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a Coca-Cola for breakfast every day. So I got piles of these peanut butter jars. Now the reason I'm putting them at the entrance like this, I want to see if I can demonstrate some of the Nasinop scenting. It's a little bit, you can't distinguish it because the bees are all white anyhow. But you can see how these two bees here are fanning, since they can't see very well because their eyes are all covered up with sugar.
Okay, so they're helping out the brethren.
Yeah, sisterin.
Okay.
And brothers. Yeah, this is a drone. You see now some of them are parading on in from the jar. Now I am going to dump them all. I'm not going to wait till the last bee comes in, but you can see how, because they're disoriented, they'll sort of. And this is what you want to see if you're catching a swarm, or if you're installing a package. There's always going to be a few that are not dumped directly in, but you want to see this kind of activity at the entrances, that they're accepting this container as a house. Okay. Yeah, you'll see some of these probably at the entrance to another hive. What's that?
If you do a sugar shake and you need to treat, you should do a sugar shake afterwards.
Very important. Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. So let's assume we found a couple dozen mites here. We put whatever treatment we're going to do, or do whatever treatment procedure we're going to do. Within a couple of weeks, you want to, less than that, a week to 10 days, you'd want to go back and make sure that whatever you've done is working. A lot of the materials for control are essentially a 2 brood cycle time frame, and that's too long to wait to see if it's having an effect or not. So you do want to see what way your treatment regime is trending versus the mite reproductive capacity.
You said you normally do it for how long?
Well, depending upon the material you're using.
No, I mean
this?
what's the time you usually wait?
I like to wait about 5 to 10 minutes. I usually like to get down to the necessarily do. We came close. Make my collection, then do my inspection, and then by the time I'm done with the inspection, I can do the shake. Because of a demonstration like this, our time sequence in an inspection is a little bit askew from normal. You know, because we're stopping, we're talking, we're passing frames around, that sort of thing. But yeah, I like to make that collection, set it, you know, aside, generally in the shade. You know, it's usually warm enough that we don't want to cook them, and not that that's the case today yet. But yeah.
How much breathing room? I noticed, like when you set these on the concrete block, the baseboard screen coming upflow from underneath there.
Is this a screen bottom? Yeah, it is. The essential aspect of the screen bottom board is really was developed as another additive to controlling varroa mites. You know, the mites will fall through this, any phoretic mites that get, the mite will fall through the screen, and I think it was Jeff Pettis that determined that the mites are not really very capable of finding their way back at better than an inch. Ventilation, that is all determined by your environment, you know. Bees are very efficient at determining their own. Like we've got an entrance reducer here that they've got about a 2-inch opening by about 3/4 inch, and that's sufficient for them. I've seen booming colonies that have even less space than that. I've seen other colonies that don't even have an entire wall on one side of the hive, and the bees will pretty much keep that cluster.
Yeah,
it's not black, is it?
At the temperatures that need to be.
In the summertime,
Bees always have a larger patch.
It takes more work for them. Yeah. Oh, you mean confining them like that? Or?
yeah, I mean without like, for example, if you had only, you're talking about a booming colony with 2 inches of space, nutrients or less. In the summertime when we hit 90 or better degree heat, when there's full sun, is excess heat a problem if the bottom board is mainly covered?
Well, if you think about some of the natural habitats of the bees, in the woods, in a tree that might have a knothole that's not as big as this, and they seem to self-regulate pretty well. So I think it's more determined by them once their domicile is established than us trying to account for it.
I'm just curious. Like,
yeah.
Do better under the hardwoods than they do out in the sun.
Yeah, yeah. I would with honeybees. I would kind of, because of the small hive beetle, go the opposite way. The beetles tend to a more humid and a more dank kind of environment, a more close environment. The beetles seem to have an edge against the bees in those environments. Up until 98, that wasn't necessarily the case. But when they came in, they did seem to tip the scale towards a more open, sunnier environment for the bees.
We actually had the reducer onto the smallest opening possible because these were all
They're all weaker colonies.
Small hives when we split one hive into 3. And for them to guard that hive with less bees, it's better if they only have to guard a very small space. We just on Thursday came out here and we opened up a little bit more space. Some people take the reducer completely off in the summer. I never do. I always have the mouse guard type with the holes and they can get ventilation, but I don't like them guarding the whole front of the hive. That's just me. But right now, that's why we have them opened up a little bit more. They're building up in numbers. They can handle guarding that space. Because you all know that the drones don't have a stinger, they don't guard, they don't forage. And the other thing to keep the hive cool in the summer, you have got to have a lot of water for them. They forage for pollen and nectar and water. They spread the water out and then they fan. It's just like an air conditioning unit in there. Yet they need 85% humidity to raise their young. So they know what to do, but you've got to have a water source for them close by.
How close? Like a
Like from here to that car. That's a good distance. Because they come out and they go zoop. If you put the water feeder right here, they'll never use it. But if you've got a pond or, and then if you got neighbors with a pool, they will go to that if you don't start them off in your yard.
Right, that's what I've heard. And I do have a neighbor with a pool. It's not like directly adjacent, but it's
You know what you
one
can do?
house
You
over.
can put a little bit of sugar water in your water features around the yard, get them going to
See, I've
those,
got
and they'll
just
be
a bird
OCD.
bath like right next to where the hives are going to be. That's not.
Put it out away from them.
Okay.
When I laugh when I get a new client and they'll put the water feeder right there next,
Yeah.
and I'm going, nope, they're not going to.
So they want to go find it.
They go zoop and out.
Yeah.
And you have to put
Okay.
rocks or stones or something in there.
Rocks or stones so they don't drown, because they're the worst swimmers ever. Oh my gosh, worst swimmers ever.
So what do
Those
you
chicken
suggest
feeders
for
are really
chicken?
good, and I put rocks around and then it's a 4-gallon or something or other, and it's easy to fill. But not the chicken feeder where you lift up the whole middle, because then the rocks always go underneath. It's the
Get a string of big fat bees.
yeah, beads or something. But you want them to be able to, if they do fall in the water, swim enough to get to something that they